Part 50. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, Mo. Chapter 491. Damn fat man, where did you say you came from? Tell me, are you behind all this? If you dare to fool me, I'll see if I don't kill you. A burst of men's curses echoed in Yefanyan's ears, followed closely by bursts of noisy complaints. She frowned and slowly opened her tired eyes. I saw that she was in a dark and narrow space, with only a dim light coming from the side corner. Through this dim light, the scene ahead can be vaguely seen. Yeshinwei, whose whole body was stained with blood and turned into a bloody man, stood up at this moment, with an angry look on his face and holding a strong man in his hand, who was the fat man in the previous team. Yeshinwei stretched out his fist and made gestures at the fat man's head, his tone harsh and full of anger. The fat man on the opposite side defended with panic on his face, while Zui Feng and Zhu Yu tried to pull them apart, but in front of Yeshinwei, the two of them were as fragile as ants shaking a tree. Ye Wuchen, who looked confused, sat in a corner aside, staring blankly at the farce in front of him, and from time to time he put the remaining crystal core in his hand into his mouth. Although Yeshinwei's clothes were in tatters and his whole body was soaked in blood, he was full of energy and did not appear to be seriously injured at all. Although he looked miserable now, there was no sign of any injuries on his body. He had already exhausted a lot of energy in the fierce battle with the mammoth beast, and then a rock appeared, and the latter even had the elemental ability to restrain him. With the two destructive beasts combined, even Yeshinwei was finally defeated. Even with such ordinary abilities, it was difficult to kill him. His coma was only due to the mental trauma caused by the struggle with the remaining soul in his body. Even during this period of recuperation, his physical strength recovered to a certain extent. Yeshinwei cursed at the fat man and angrily said, "Tell me, what is the purpose of you Yongye people coming here?" The fat man shrank his neck and hurriedly defended. "It's unfair, brother. If I had really been up to no good, I wouldn't be locked up with you now." At this moment, Yefanyan, who had been unconscious for a long time in the darkness, slowly stood up. The intense consumption caused by summoning the holy sword had not yet recovered, and her face was pale. Seeing Yefanyan wake up, Yeshinwei's face finally showed a hint of joy. "Fanyan, how are you?" Yefanyan shook his head and looked at the fat man hiding aside with a deep look. The fat man was stared at by Yefanyan, and he couldn't help but shuddered when he thought of the latter's majestic appearance holding a holy sword and killing all the beasts. This eldest sister is also a cruel person. "Are you from the Eternal Night Dynasty?" Speaking of this, Yefanyan's face looked particularly solemn. This was her first face-to-face contact with the Yanjai clan. This powerful force was far beyond what she could handle now. But Yefanyan knows that there are some things she will have to face eventually, and this is also her mission in this world. The fat man opened his mouth in a hurry, just about to say something to defend himself. But at this moment, streaks of light suddenly shone in front of the few people, and the sky above the narrow dark space was suddenly filled with faint fireflies. "This is..." Everyone looked at the bright passage ahead, and a look of vigilance suddenly appeared in their eyes. They still remember that several of them were captured by that destructive level bird. At this moment, the fireflies that filled the dark cage actually lined up one after another, vaguely forming a road as if to guide everyone forward. Yeshinwei first looked at Fatty and the others, and then stared at the fireflies fluttering in front of him. Finally, he snorted coldly and walked towards the front where the fireflies gathered. Several people looked at each other and knew that this was not the time for a conflict, so they followed Yeshinwei's footsteps and walked out of the cage. As soon as they walked out of the cage, everyone's eyes suddenly lit up. The scene outside was completely different from the deep and dark cage. The surroundings are surrounded by lush shrubs, flowers, and grass, birds chirping, and a clear river can be seen in the distance. I thought I was in a fairyland on Earth. It was only then that everyone discovered that the cage that originally imprisoned them was made of thick and towering tree trunks. Everyone followed the fireflies floating in the air and moved forward. The scene in the forest was still picturesque, with birds singing and flowers fragrant. Occasionally, you can see a few small animals with normal body shape, without any ferocious look of mutated beasts. After a while, everyone arrived deep in the valley under the guidance of fireflies. This is. Yeshinwei, who was walking in front, suddenly stopped and looked at the thing in front of him with narrowed pupils. In front of everyone, there was a towering tree entrenched deep in the valley. The branches of the giant tree alone are so thick that you can't see the edge at a glance. The pines are majestic and cover a vast area. The branches and leaves on the top of the tree even block out the sun and the sky. The entire giant tree is glowing with a faint fluorescent light. Everyone under its feet looks so small and fragile. The fat man looked at the towering tree in front of him and blurted out with something in his heart. This is the 1,000-year-old tree king. Almost the next second the fat man made a sound, a few scattered branches and leaves on the top of the giant tree fell in the wind. The fluorescent light emitted from the tree also became more intense, and an old voice came from it. "You are here." As soon as these words came out, everyone including Yeshinwei was frightened and took several steps back, with a look of vigilance in their eyes. With intelligence and human speech, there is no doubt that this towering tree in front of them is also a destructive existence. As if sensing the panic of the crowd, the giant tree with fireflies on its surface spoke again. "Don't panic, I have no ill will towards you." As he spoke, the stars of fireflies surrounded everyone, and the vigorous vitality contained in it instantly enveloped several people. Including Yeshinwei and others, they immediately felt a warm current flowing into their bodies, and they felt refreshed. No one noticed that a ray of fluorescence surrounded Yefanyan's body. When it passed the jade pendant on his chest, the jade pendant suddenly flashed with golden sacred light. Only the old voice in the giant tree became a little trance. "This breath, are you really chosen?" As the branches and leaves swayed, a fluorescent green old man slowly emerged under the giant tree with fluorescence. Everyone was shocked. There was no doubt that the old man in front of them was the mutant tree king who had stood in the 10,000 Beasts mountain range for thousands of years. "Although I don't know whether you are in the same group as the humans outside who attacked the beast's nest, I can tell you that all of you have been used." The Tree King's voice was quite indifferent, but what he said surprised everyone. The face of the old man gathered by the fluorescent light was extremely blurred, and only the old outline and long beard could be vaguely seen. It glanced in the direction of Yefanyan without leaving a trace, looked at everyone and said, "A few months ago, several humans in red robes besieged the beast's nest. Each of them had destructive strength, and their goal was to seize something in the Beast King's body. Heterogeneous cult." Hearing the description of the Tree King, everyone immediately thought of the mysterious cult organization. The Tree King continued, "This group of people has been coveting the 10,000 Beasts mountain range for a long time. As early as a year ago, they let out the strongest beast in the mountain range, the Mangshan Qianhu. Even the Dark Crow, one of the 4 fierce beasts, is a member of this group. But after the Beast King appeared, this group of people actually changed their goal and went straight into the beast nest to try to control the Beast King and extract some kind of power from his body." Tianlai Novel Network. Including the human army that entered the 10,000 Beasts mountain range this time, they were all bewitched by those people and gathered together. The purpose is to use the power of the human race to fight against the Beast King. Yeshinwei listened to the explanation of the Tree King with a skeptical attitude on his face. "According to what you said, your beast nest is also a victim of persecution by the alien religion." The shadow of the Tree King shook his head slowly. "Whether you believe it or not, the Beast King has never ordered to be hostile to the human race. The threat you are talking about is just the bewitching of that group of people." After speaking, the towering tree behind him swayed gently, and the fluorescent green light was bright. Then, the trees all around began to glow, and the branches and leaves began to sway. My clones are all over the 10,000 Beasts mountain range, and no news can escape my ears. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 492. In the depths of a clear green valley, the lake water on the shore ripples, and layers of green mountains can be seen in the distance. On a green lawn on the river bank, countless well-behaved animals are gathering together, forming a circle around a patch of grass in the middle. These animals have bright and clear eyes, and are completely unlike the bloodthirsty and violent mutant beasts in the outside world. In the center of these small animals, a pretty woman in a white dress is kneeling down, and a seriously injured brown sika deer is lying at her feet. The abdomen of the sika deer was bitten and injured by some kind of ferocious beast, revealing a large area of blood and exposed organs, and the situation is miserable. What's more terrifying is that there is still foul-smelling black blood spreading from the wound, and the deer's body began to twitch violently. His eyes rolled back, and he let out a violent low moan, and he was about to be corroded and turned into a terrible mutant monster. At this moment, the woman in white suddenly stretched out her fair jade hand and placed it on the wound, and the silver-white light of stars was released from her palm. In an instant, when the starlight came into contact with the wound, the black blood that had been flowing continuously solidified instantly, and even the rotten wound grew granulations at a speed visible to the naked eye. The pupils of the fawn gradually regained their clarity, and it stretched out its tongue to lick the back of the woman's hand, with obedience in its eyes. Seeing this, the pretty woman also smiled, bandaged the wound on the fawn's abdomen, patted its neck, and said softly, "Be good, don't go outside again." At this moment, a loud cry came from the sky. I saw a huge rock bird falling from the sky, and the violent wind pressure caused the surrounding grass and trees to rage. The powerful force pressed down from the sky, and the animals around were scared to lean closely against the woman in white. As soon as the pengbird landed, its body shrank rapidly until it turned into a huge human figure several meters high, with a bird's head and a human body. The pengbird looked at the woman in white in front of it and said, "My lord, those human troops have arrived outside the beast's nest and started to attack the inside of the valley. Have they come?" The woman still spoke softly after hearing this, and there was no hint of strength in her tone. A pair of flawless white jade hands gently stroked the trembling animals beside her, and the woman whispered, "This is our last home, and it must not be destroyed by anyone." The pengbird continued, "The Tree King has ordered other beasts to resist humans, but those strange beasts can only hold on for a while. My lord, I'm afraid you will have to do it yourself this time." The woman in white nodded, and there was no sign of strength in her weak appearance. "This time, I'll have to ask you all." With a loud cry, the huge figure of the pengbird soared out of the valley. The woman in white looked at the quiet mountains ahead and was about to turn around and walk towards the depths of the valley. But at this moment, a man's chuckle suddenly came from behind her. I didn't expect that the Beast King was actually a woman, with such a gentle personality, caring for subordinates, and loving animals. "Who is it?" The woman in white was shocked and turned her head suddenly. On the big tree not far behind her, there stood a black-robed figure wearing a mask. The woman's eyes were somewhat unbelievable. She didn't expect that someone could block her perception and appear behind her so easily. Through the crimson hideous mask, you can still vaguely see the pair of eyes with a smile. The next second, the man on the tree turned into a wisp of black flame and appeared in front of the woman in an instant. Looking at the pretty woman in front of him, Miu somehow felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Suppressing the confusion in his heart, Miu still had a smile on his face. He slowly took off the mask and looked at the Supreme King of the 10,000 Beasts mountain in front of him. "Nice to meet you, you can call me." Before he finished speaking, Miu's tone suddenly stagnated and he couldn't say anything. Then he frowned and looked puzzled. The pretty woman in a white dress in front of him suddenly covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes full of shock and throbbing. Her clear eyes were full of tears. She bit her lower lip tightly, and looked at Mu Chiu's face in disbelief. The next second, she saw her light body suddenly pounced on Mu Chiu in front of her. There was no murderous intent or hostility in her every move, but there was an unspeakable collapse and grievance. Mu Chiu only felt that his chest and abdomen were suddenly hit by a heavy softness, and the next second the woman's body had tightly embraced his body. The soft black hair brushed against Mu Chiu's face, and a natural fragrance was refreshing. The head rested on Mu Chiu's shoulder, and Mu Chiu instantly felt a large area of wetness on his shoulder, and faint sobs were heard. A gentle voice echoed in Mu Chiu's ears. "Finally, I've waited for you. Teacher. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 493. Teacher. Hearing the woman's title, Mu Chiu's expression suddenly became strange. Feeling the soft touch on her chest and the moisture on her shoulders, Mu Chiu's mind fell into deep thought. He has only accepted 3 students so far. Among them, Lin Feng, who has the blood of the flame demon, died in the battle of redemption between Yuhei and Zilan Base. Shueqianya was kidnapped by Zilan Base after the battle of redemption, and was later rescued by Mu Chiu in the divine world. After integrating the apocalypse key, Shueqianya is able to control the destruction level sacred object Apocalypse Mecha, and is now one of the highest combat powers in the Yanjai dynasty. The remaining one is the little lowly Su Wen, who has the ability to listen to all things. In the battle of redemption that changed the pattern of Yuhei, her parents were killed by the cult. The little girl was filled with grief and anger and left Yuhei to go out to work alone. Since then, there has been no news. But Su Wen was just a teenage girl before she left. How could she be like this woman in her 20s? Etc. Mu Chiu's eyes suddenly changed, staring straight at the woman in the white dress in front of her. There were still tears that had not yet fallen in the corners of the woman's eyes. She stretched out a pair of white jade hands to rub her rosy eyes. I felt pity for the pear blossoms with rain on them. But in Mu Chiu's eyes, the figure of the sobbing woman in front of him slowly overlapped with the little girl wearing a floral dress and a ponytail in his mind. Are you, Su Wen? The woman in white clothes in front of her nodded with tears in her eyes. Mu Chiu's eyes flashed with surprise. He looked at the woman's bulging chest, then looked at the woman's pretty face, and asked hesitantly. How did you get so big? In Mu Chiu's memory, Su Wen left Yuhei for less than a year. What happened during this period that made this girl change so much? And how did she become the Beast King who reigns deep in the Beast Mountain range and is respected by thousands of ferocious beasts? Su Wen wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, looked at the man in black robe in front of her with deep eyes, and said softly. Teacher, do you believe in reincarnation? Reincarnation? Mu Chiu's eyes narrowed slightly. As soon as she opened her mouth, Su Wen asked Mu Chiu an unimaginable question. Next, Su Wen told Mu Chiu her secrets during this period. It turns out that Su Wen was determined to leave Yuhei from the beginning. In other words, from the moment she stepped out of Jade Sea, she was no longer the simple and kind-hearted little girl she once was. Her parents were both ordinary human survivors, and both died due to the influence of the pagan religion during the Redemption War. The death of the 2 relatives whom she cared about the most completely ignited the flame of hatred in the little girl's heart. She had only one thought in her mind: kill all the alien cults and pay for the debt with blood. After leaving Jade Sea, she went all the way south. Whenever she encountered traces of the alien cult in the surrounding ruined bases, she would control the army of alien beasts to bloodbath them. Even if she encounters some powerful beings that she cannot fight against, she can still escape in advance by relying on the perception of the beasts around her. Relying on the ability to communicate with all things, this little girl really allowed this little girl to destroy several strongholds of the heterogeneous religion rooted in the ruins. However, if you often walk by the river, your shoes won't get wet. After all, the little girl is still close to each other. During an operation to annihilate a foreign cult stronghold, Su Wen was unlucky enough to encounter an S-class purple-robed cultist who could block perception. How could a little girl with only A-level strength be the opponent of such a strong man? The large number of strange beasts he recovered along the way were brutally killed by him. Su Wen fled all the way under the protection of a few remaining alien beasts, and finally arrived at this vast mountain that was tens of thousands of miles away. But how could the other party easily let go of Su Wen, the murderer who destroyed several strongholds of the heterogeneous religion? The purple-robed cultists chased and killed several ferocious beasts that blocked the way, and finally caught up with Su Wen, who was running away in a hurry. Just when the other party was about to kill Su Wen, a figure suddenly appeared and saved Su Wen. "Who saved you?" Su Wen shook her head gently. "He was covered in a white robe. I didn't see his appearance clearly." After listening to Su Wen's description, Mu Chiu's eyes instantly flashed with light. It's this mysterious man in white robe again. The other party had previously guided Mu Chiu to southern Xinjiang, and even the information about the 8 sources of creation came from this white-robed man. Who is he and what is his purpose? But Mu Chiu knew in her heart that Su Wen in front of her was also one of the 8 sources of creation that the Yuan sect was looking for. "Did he say anything to you?" Su Wen didn't notice anything unusual about Mu Chiu, and continued. "He gave me such a pendant." Su Wen raised the silver pendant on her chest, which looked like a petal. Thinking of the experience that day, Su Wen's clear eyes flashed, and her soft voice actually brought out a bit of trembling. Then, a portal suddenly appeared in the space in front of me, and a powerful suction force that I couldn't resist drew me and several strange beasts around me in. Su Wen's next words are a bit shocking. "We lived in another, more terrifying space for 10 years, and we didn't return to this world until half a year ago." This time, Mu Chiu's eyes became surprised. So the man in white robe actually sent Su Wen to another world, and the latter stayed in that world for 10 years before returning. No wonder Su Wen has changed so much and her strength has improved so rapidly. But this also happens to illustrate a problem. The mysterious man in white robe has some powerful ability to travel through time and space. All the superpowers involving time and space are extremely powerful, not to mention the unidentified man in white robe, which is enough to make Mu Chiu pay attention. Mu Chiu thought of the other world mentioned by Su Wen. What kind of world is behind that door? Su Wen subconsciously held the pendant in her hand and murmured. It was not until later that I realized that what I experienced was actually the legendary 6 reincarnations. 6 reincarnations. After Kuakuo and Mao Mao were sucked into the door, they entered the animal realm of the 6 realms, where they suffered for 10 years and grew into destructive beasts. Mu Chiu then remembered the huge mammoth beast he had seen before, and the blue rock that could transform into a birdman. It seems that a squirrel and a sparrow were often seen accompanying Su Wen in the Jade Sea before. I didn't expect that these two would become so terrifying after experiencing the 6 realms of reincarnation. Su Wen opened her cherry lips and said chilling words in a weak voice. "And I was thrown into the 6 realms of reincarnation, the cruelest, most terrifying, and most disgusting dash. The human realm. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord." Author, Mo. Chapter 494. In a deep and silent canyon, suddenly there was a loud blast of cannons. Boom. In an instant, the entire sky was illuminated with a fiery red color, and artillery missiles shot down like a meteor shower. A violent roar suddenly came from the distant hillside, alarming countless wild beasts lurking in the canyon jungle. Immediately afterwards, dazzling lights suddenly lit up on the hillside in the distance, and human figures emerged from the dense forest in the mountains, launching a fierce attack on the beast's nest ahead. The densely packed human beings are as vast as a sea of stars, lining up like a wave, with countless awakened humans leading the way. Powerful beams of various colors stretched all the way along the mountainside, and the majestic energy fluctuations made the surrounding space vibrate. This time alone, there are tens of thousands of awakened people sent by major bases. In an instant, a thrilling battle between man and beast began. Countless wild beasts burst out from the mountains and forests at this moment, their scarlet eyes biting towards the human army like crazy. In the minds of these delirious mutated beasts, only the most instinctive desire for flesh and blood remains. Even though they were faced with a human army that far exceeded them in strength and quantity, they showed no signs of retreating. A black tide of beasts has spread all over the mountain stream in a short time. In an instant, the human army and the beast tide in front of them were fighting fiercely in the depths of the canyon. From a distance, it looked like a duel between light and darkness. However, what was unexpected was that the human side had an absolute advantage from the beginning. Leading the way are the armies of awakeners led by hundreds of S-class awakeners from major bases. These awakened beings are all powerful beings who have experienced life and death in the ruins. They are not afraid even when facing this group of ferocious beasts hidden in the deep forest. In just a few moments, all the ferocious beasts at the front were killed, and their broken limbs and organs were scattered everywhere. In some cases, even the remains of the corpses were not visible at all, and only the blood staining the ground showed the intensity of the battle. Compared with the organized and coordinated attacks on the human side, the beast tide is just a group of mindless beasts that can only bite and kill in the most primitive way. Occasionally, some strange beasts with unique powers appeared, and they were besieged to death by many human awakeners in an instant. In front of our eyes, the beast tide is retreating steadily, and countless ferocious beasts have died tragically in the human fire. The beast clan is about to decline. Suddenly, an extremely low roar came from the depths behind the canyon. Then the whole land began to visibly tremble. Following bursts of regular heavy footsteps, a huge mountain-like thing appeared in front of everyone. I saw this huge ferocious beast with a pair of ivory-like fangs, and the hair all over its body stood upright like steel needles. The suffocating ancient atmosphere spread out, and countless humans present felt their hearts tremble. What was in front of me was a devastating beast. Immediately afterwards, a loud and piercing cry came from the distant sky, and a huge black shadow hovered over the canyon, whipping up a huge wind and slamming downwards. A huge hole was suddenly smashed into the ground below, and all humans who had time to escape were crushed into a ball of flesh. What appeared before everyone's eyes was a huge rock with blue flames all over its body. As the rock's wings trembled, blue flames also raged, and waves of flames streaked through the air. The bodies of all humans who came into contact with this wave of flames were instantly frozen into ice, and were immediately shattered by the surrounding beasts. Another devastating beast. With the appearance of these two ferocious beasts, the momentum of the entire beast tide surged instantly. Countless forest beasts began to roar along with the birds and giant beasts, and then they started to bite and kill the humans like crazy. Is that the destructive beast next to the Beast King? On the hillside behind the human army, several figures were looking at the battlefield in front of them. Lu Jinchang, Shi Haoshan, and others were also among them. These are the supreme leaders of the human army, and each of them is a destructive level existence. Several people stared at the blue rock and the mammoth beasts fighting crazily in the army, and almost no human beings were their combined enemies. This kind of power has surpassed the 4 ferocious beasts in southern Xinjiang. No wonder that Beast King can rule the 10,000 Beasts Mountains so easily. Some people commented that the strength of these 2 ferocious beasts was indeed beyond their imagination. Shi Haoshan snorted coldly. What nonsense! There are so many of us, why are we afraid of these 2 evil beasts? You don't dare, I'll go first. After saying that, he actually took the lead and rushed towards the battlefield below, leaving everyone standing there looking at each other. Haha, it seems that the character of the Lord of the Stone Castle is still vigorous and resolute. We can't let the Lord of the Stone Castle fight alone. We have to force out the King of Beasts. Lu Jinchang held the scepter and smiled with a kind face. General Lu's words make sense. Lu Jinchang has always had prestige, which gave them a way to avoid embarrassing others. Seeing this, several other people nodded, all clasped their fists in the direction of Lu Jinchang, and followed Shi Haoshan towards the battlefield below. Only Lu Jinchang was left standing on the hillside with a deep gaze. Vaguely, a dark red shadow emerged behind him. "Flat-haired beast, I'm here to fight you." Shi Haoshan shouted loudly, and his muscular body jumped down from the hillside. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a golden giant more than 10 meters tall, and punched the mammoth on the back with a flying pounce. The latter immediately let out a long roar, and the hair on his back shot out like steel needles, turning into spears, and all the humans around who were hit died instantly. Like dense rain, the spears hit the golden giant transformed by Shi Haoshan, making a sound of metal clashing, but it was completely unharmed. Immediately afterwards, 2 more destruction-level strongmen launched an attack from the side, completely blocking the retreat of the mammoth. A shrill cry came from the battlefield on the other side, and wisps of cold air came along the air. Deist Lucien and several other destruction-level beings also attacked the giant pengbird at this time. In a flash, after the human's destroyer joined the battle, the advantage that the beasts had just established was gone. However, everyone knew that the Beast King who was dominating the depths of the beast nest had not yet appeared. This earth-shattering battle to encircle and suppress the beast nest had just begun. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 495. Chiang. A loud cry echoed in the sky, and the huge blue bird spread its wings in the sky. As the wings flapped, large waves of blue flame rolled up like hellfire rising. All human beings swept in by the underworld fire will have their bodies instantly frozen into pieces by the extreme cold air like an underworld, and then shattered into slag in an instant. Compared to the sheer destructiveness of the mammoth's body, this blue rock with elemental abilities brings even greater pressure to humans. Just as the dark fire Daypen was raging in the sky, Taoist Deer Immortal and another destruction-level powerhouse had arrived together. I saw Taoist Master Lu Immortal flying up into the sky on a giant bat, his clothes flying, facing the netherworld rock in mid-air. Feeling the trembling from the huge bat under my feet, facing a destructive existence like the Penganiao, even the S-level bat beasts are instinctively afraid of it. Taoist Master Lucien's eyes narrowed slightly, and he shouted loudly, "You evil beast, please stop being so rampant." After saying that, the whole person actually jumped up from the back of the bat, the Taoist robe he was wearing bulged, and the whole person's body gradually changed. The body size has expanded several times, and a pair of extremely huge horns have grown on the top of the head. In the blink of an eye, Taoist Deer Immortal transformed into a giant human-shaped deer standing upright. The head of the Deer Immortal Taoist who transformed into a giant deer lowered his head, revealing the huge horns on his head, and launched a fierce momentum towards the blue rock in the sky. The surrounding space trembled with the movements of Taoist Master Lucien, which showed how powerful he was. The rock bird chirped, and countless icy blue flames swept out as its wings flapped, turning into streaks of frost in the air and dispersing. However, as soon as the frost touched the head of Taoist Julu, it was shattered by the powerful impact of a pair of huge antlers. The blue rock's pupils were deep, and it was about to flap its wings and fly upwards. However, at this moment, another destruction-level strongman blocked its way. I saw the man standing in the air and shouting loudly at the top of Penganiao's head. Shock. As soon as he finished speaking, Penganiao suddenly felt dizzy in his mind and his body stagnated. At this moment, Taoist Master Julu had already charged through the air with a pair of powerful horns. Just as the two ferocious beasts were under siege, the canyon battlefield below also entered a white-hot stage. The corpses of humans and ferocious beasts were everywhere, and the surrounding large tracts of secluded forest were illuminated by boiling fire. A group of human soldiers frantically pulled the triggers and fired in front of them, but the bodies of these completely mutated jungle beasts could no longer be destroyed by ordinary bullets. For a time, countless human soldiers were attacked and bitten by ferocious mutant beasts, and died miserably. A black shadow suddenly appeared above the head of a human soldier, and he was about to be killed. At this moment, a gust of wind suddenly passed by the side. A man with bandaged hands punched out, blowing the beast's body apart. He looked at the trembling soldiers lying on the ground. "Hey, are you okay?" But the soldier's attention seemed not to be on him at all. His white lips moved, and he pointed at the man's back and said tremblingly, "You, behind you." The man's pupils shrank, and he was about to look back subconsciously, but suddenly there was a gust of wind behind him. A huge force hit the man's vest, and the man was instantly knocked out, and fell to the side of the rocks, not knowing whether he was alive or dead. The rescued human soldier looked at the scene in front of him with a face full of disbelief. All the trees in the forest suddenly glowed with green fluorescence. Even the surrounding ground trembled, and the soil beneath the ground began to loosen. The next second, these giant trees rooted deep in the ground rose up from the ground and turned into tall tree men, attacking the surrounding humans. Not only that, the giant trees in the entire canyon stood up from the ground as if inspired by something, and a faint fluorescent light surrounded the forest, and thousands of tree people appeared in front of everyone. "What's going on with these big trees?" Many human soldiers looked at the giant tree man who looked like a monster beside them, their eyes full of fear of the unknown. An awakened person reacted and said loudly, "It's the Tree King, the 1,000-year-old Tree King deep in the beast's lair." Countless giant trees rose from the ground, turning into ferocious tree demons and launching fierce attacks on the surrounding humans. For a time, the human troops in the rear were instantly killed in large numbers by the tree demons and ferocious beasts. With the fireflies surrounding them, even the awakened ones on the front line battlefield fell into passivity. At the same time, at the front of the battlefield, the encirclement and suppression of the two destructive beasts was coming to an end. Even the giant mammoth beast with a hard body was retreating steadily under the joint attack of several destructive level experts, and its huge body pressed the mountain cliff behind it to collapse inch by inch. Shihaoshan, whose body turned into a golden giant, had a fierce look on his face, his abdominal muscles bulged high, and his gold-plated fist smashed down, causing the surrounding space to distort. The steel needles and spears shot out from the mammoth beast's body hit Shihaoshan's golden body without any damage at all. Instead, Shihaoshan took this opportunity to bully him and struck the mammoth beast's body with a fist that was as strong as gold and stone. The mammoth beast suddenly howled miserably as a huge force of tens of millions came and killed it, and the two destructive level powerhouses following Shihaoshan also frequently displayed supernatural powers. In a flash, the mammoth's body had cracked, and blood gushed out of its flesh like a spring. The Blue Rock was also injured by Taoist Lucien and another destructive level warrior, and looked miserable. Boom! The scepter made a dull sound when it touched the ground. The energetic Lu Jinchang walked to the front of the battlefield, looking at the huge beast covered in blood in front of him with a deep gaze. The next second, he suddenly raised the scepter in his hand and touched the ground, and a heavy energy flowed through the scepter. Crack, crack. The ground under Lu Jinchang's feet suddenly cracked into an extremely deep crack, like a huge ground python moving around. All the beasts and monsters on the battlefield that were touched by this deep crack were torn into pieces and turned into countless broken corpses. That's General Lu's mountains and hills. Some awakened people noticed the energy fluctuations like the collapse of the mountains and cracks under their feet, and they were shocked. They dodged repeatedly and dared not touch the crack at all. The ultimate target of this deep crack like a python is the mammoth beast that was beaten to a bloody mess by several destruction-level masters. Just when the abyss crack was about to touch the mammoth beast, a dazzling silver light suddenly fell from the sky and directly blocked the crack like a swimming python from the front. Immediately afterwards, an indescribable powerful breath came from the depths of the valley, and the terrifying fluctuations instantly oppressed the minds of everyone present. Lu Jinchang's expression was even more condensed, looking at the direction of the silver light from the depths of the valley in the distance. This powerful fluctuation is the Beast King. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 496. At this moment, the moonlight in the sky suddenly became particularly shining. Accompanied by the powerful fluctuation of breath, the silvery white moonlight sprinkled on the battlefield, condensed into a group of light and shadow in the depths of the canyon, and a human figure emerged vaguely. Countless humans and beasts in the canyon battlefield were attracted by this fluctuation, and their hearts trembled. Is that the Beast King? In an instant, everyone stopped and looked far away, holding their breath and staring at the center where the silvery white light gathered. The silvery white beams gathered into a human figure in front of the mammoth. Finally, as the light dimmed, a woman wearing a white dress and bare feet appeared in front of everyone. The woman had a pretty face and flawless skin, like a piece of top-grade mutton fat jade. A long hair spread to the waist, and the moonlight seemed to cover it with a layer of silvery white gauze, looking like a fairy under the moon at a glance. A crescent moon vaguely emerged in the woman's clear eyes. She turned her head and looked at the mammoth beast behind her, which was countless times larger than her. Her eyes slightly lowered and a look of heartache flashed across them. She stretched out her fair jade hand and floated in front of the beast, with a silver white mist falling from her palm. Then, an incredible scene happened. The wounds of the mammoth beast, which was covered with wounds under the siege of several destruction-level masters, healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. That's the Beast King. On the battlefield of the canyon, countless people looked at the white figure in front of the mammoth beast in disbelief. Before this, they had never seen the true face of the Beast King, and they had imagined the terrifying and hideous face of the Beast King. But they could not imagine that the pure woman in front of them was actually the target of their encirclement and suppression, the Beast King who was dominating the depths of the beast's nest and commanding all the beasts. Don't be fooled by her appearance, she is still the ferocious Beast King in essence. An awakened person reacted and shouted to his companion beside him. Yes, don't forget the purpose of our trip, kill the Beast King and defend southern Xinjiang. As the call resounded in the crowd, everyone followed suit. Kill the Beast King and defend southern Xinjiang. In an instant, the crowd was excited, and a large number of human soldiers began to charge towards the distant Beast King, shouting and killing. Is this the Beast King? Ha ha ha, interesting, I won't be soft just because you are a woman. Shi Haoshan looked at the delicate figure on the ground and couldn't help laughing, but his figure did not stop and dived down. Seeing this, several other awakened people temporarily gave up the attack on the two beasts and instead focused their firepower on the Beast King that suddenly appeared. Facing the majestic fluctuations swept by many awakened people, Su Wen's eyes flashed a chill. Her cherry lips parted slightly, and she spoke the most ruthless words in a gentle tone. I will kill all those who invaded the beast's nest today. After that, she raised her hand, and the silver light flashed in her palm, and a strong energy wave swept along the sky. Originally, many awakened people crossed the beast group and attacked the white-clothed woman in the distance, but suddenly the sky flashed with silver light like raindrops. Look! Everyone looked up in panic, and saw a brilliant galaxy suddenly passing through the sky. The most terrifying thing is that these dense stars did not slow down after passing through the sky, and actually fell straight towards the direction of the canyon battlefield. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the galaxy in the sky had already slid down, bringing countless burning stars to fall on the battlefield. A large area of the human army was hit by the destructive star meteorite, and their bodies were instantly gone, and their souls were annihilated. With just a wave of his hand, he summoned the stars in the sky to fall, and wiped out tens of thousands of human coalition forces. This method is difficult for even ordinary destruction-level masters to do. Until this moment, people were sure that the woman in white before them was the ferocious beast king they wanted to fight. Death, evil creature. The dear immortal Taoist priest turned into a giant deer in human form, and a pair of huge deer antlers rushed across the battlefield. Even the falling stars could not stop him. Su Wen's eyes condensed, and with a wave of his hand, the moonlight condensed into a silver-white long whip, which was waved away. The long whip that turned into a silver-white silk thread was like a snake moving in the air one after another, and in an instant it was wrapped around the body of the dear immortal Taoist priest. The huge deer antlers were bound by the silver whip, and the dear immortal Taoist priest seemed to have lost his direction and rushed around. He crushed all the way like a bulldozer, and wherever he passed, whether it was humans or ferocious beasts, they were all turned into pieces. Until the cliff in front of him was smashed into a big hole, his body was actually unscathed. On the other side, a soul-level destroyer took the opportunity to come to Su Wen's side, and launched a soul attack with his eyes wide open. Suppress. An invisible soul impact came directly at him, but Su Wen looked at it without hesitation. In an instant, the destroyer felt a silver crescent moon appear in his mind, oppressing his mind. He was so scared that he bit his tongue in a hurry, blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and his body staggered, looking at Su Wen's figure in horror. He was actually backfired by this wave of soul impact just now. At this moment, a huge black shadow suddenly pressed down on Su Wen's head, and the huge body with golden light was about to crush Su Wen into pieces. Tianlai Novel Network. The Golden Giant transformed by Shi Haoshan. At the critical moment, the ground under Su Wen's feet suddenly cracked, and a series of emerald green fluorescence emerged from the ground. Several thick branches stretched out from the deep cracks in the ground, instantly entangled and bound Shi Haoshan's golden body. The latter's eyes suddenly flashed, his muscles bulged and he broke free from the branches, his body retreated step by step, staring at the direction behind Su Wen. The ground behind Su Wen suddenly cracked, accompanied by a series of loud rumbling noises, and a huge shadow instantly enveloped the depths of the canyon. Fluorescent light filled the battlefield, and an ancient atmosphere filled the battlefield. A towering tree that could not be seen at a glance appeared in front of everyone. This is the 1,000-year-old Tree King. On the top of the canyon, no one noticed that a figure in a black robe was looking at the tragic battlefield below, and there was a faint blood-red light flashing in the eyes under the mask. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 497. Countless humans on the canyon battlefield stared at the towering giant tree that took root from the ground, and the ancient and old breath came to their faces. Even the 1,000-year-old tree spirit appeared. Some people couldn't help but sigh, this is an ancient existence that has truly survived for thousands of years. After the giant tree appeared, it continuously supplied the surrounding forest with a magnificent vitality. The trees rooted in the jungle actually thrived at a speed visible to the naked eye, and their bodies rose layer by layer. Accompanied by the fluorescent light of stars, the thick trees in the forest were intertwined and rose from the ground, turning into huge tree monsters and attacking the surrounding humans. Each of these monsters, which can be called tree monsters, is extremely tall, and artillery bombardment on them is completely unscathed, and ordinary awakeners are even more difficult to match. For a while, under the joint attack of the tree demon and the beast, the battle situation fell into a stalemate again. Under the towering tree, the woman with a faint silver light all over her body stared at him, with a crescent moon floating in her eyes. In front of her was the army of countless human awakeners. At this moment, Several powerful destructive level fluctuations had already rushed over first. She was seen dancing with her white hands, her jade fingers floating in the air, and circles of silver halos suddenly rippled around her body. In an instant, this silver halo rippled like ripples. At first, it was as big as a bowl at the fingertips, and in an instant it covered the entire football field. All the humans touched by this halo stagnated, as if some strange changes had occurred in their bodies. Those ordinary human soldiers were fine, but those human awakeners had undergone amazing changes. Some awakeners who had transformed into orcs suddenly stopped their assault and looked at the changes on their bodies in disbelief. These orcs either shrank several times and turned back to normal people, or their limbs mutated and their bodies became deformed and weak. The serious ones had hideous faces, their eyes were full of rage, and they attacked their companions with confusion. There were also awakeners who were good at soul abilities and suffered backlash from themselves. Their faces were empty and lifeless, and their 7 orifices were bleeding. And some awakeners with other superpowers also had their bodies mutated instantly, and their superpowers mutated uncontrollably. The stronger the awakener, the more obvious the changes to their bodies. What is going on? My ability is gone. Many awakeners looked at the changes in their bodies in panic, but they were besieged by the surrounding beasts in an instant after losing their power. For a while, the desperate screams and wails of humans could be heard in the canyon battlefield. Looking at the awakened people with mutated powers around him, Shi Haoshan seemed to have noticed something, and suddenly looked at the woman in the center of the silver-white halo. "Is it you?" The silver-white halo continued to spread around the canyon, and all the human bodies that touched this beam of light mutated. There is no doubt that the initiator of all this is the Beast King in front of him. Gradually, even some human soldiers felt weak, and some even lost the strength to pull the trigger. Shi Haoshan saw this and showed a fierce look, shouting at several destruction-level strongmen beside him. "This woman is strange, kill her quickly." The crowd did not neglect the Beast King in front of them because they were a woman, and they all tried their best to kill her. In the end times, even a child who seems to be powerless may become a cruel and bloodthirsty demon in the next second. Shi Haoshan swung his iron lead-like fist towards the woman's head, and the latter raised her head at this time. When their eyes met, Shi Haoshan saw a pair of clear eyes without any emotion. The crescent moon on the night sky was across the sky, and the gorgeous silver light spread, touching the huge body of Shi Haoshan made of gold. At this moment, even the destructive level Shi Haoshan felt that some kind of earth-shaking changes had taken place in his body. The golden body that was originally as solid as a rock had become extremely soft. A gust of wind whistled in front, and the thick branches of the 1,000-year-old giant tree instantly hit Shi Haoshan's body. The golden body was immediately drawn with a bloody mark that was deep enough to see the bone, and Shi Haoshan was also thrown backwards by this huge force. The huge body bombarded the cliffs in the distance like a cannonball, and with a loud bang, Shi Haoshan's body appeared under the collapsed cliff. Away from the silver-white halo, the energy fluctuations in Shi Haoshan's body gradually returned to stability, and his body surface was recoated with a layer of gold. He looked at the woman in white in front of him, who was shrouded in silver light, and was still frightened. This kind of power. What kind of heaven-defying ability can make the awakened person's ability change, and even work on him, a destructive-level strongman? At this moment, the mountain in front suddenly cracked like a spider web. The crack became larger and larger until it was about to spread to the feet of the woman in white. At the far end of the crack, there was a vigorous old man holding a scepter. Lu Jinchang, one of the 2 heroes of Shan's. Since close combat does not work on this Beast King, then use a long-range attack. But just when the landslide-like offensive was about to hit the body of the woman in white, under the silver light, the originally cracked earth healed quickly in the blink of an eye. At this time, even Lu Jinchang's face became a little serious, and he murmured to himself, "She's gotten stronger." In addition, Several other destruction-level experts also joined forces to launch a powerful attack on the woman in white under the giant tree. But without exception, when their bodies touched the silver-white aura surrounding the woman, the energy fluctuations in their bodies suddenly became chaotic, and even their bodies experienced some subtle changes. Just when several destruction-level powerhouses were panicking, the attacks from the giant tree and silver light had already arrived. The Awakens who were retreating continuously looked horrified. They only knew about the existence of the Beast King, but they did not understand the strength of the Beast King. Only now did they realize the terrifying abilities of the woman in front of them, known as the Beast King. On the other side, many humans affected by the Silver Halo's ability have also fallen into a life-and-death battle. Not only did the strength of those ferocious beasts not weaken under this mysterious halo, their size and ferocity even increased several times compared to before. In addition, several destroyers were fighting against the Beast King, and most of the human army was instantly slaughtered by the surging tide of beasts, and countless miserable screams filled the battlefield. At the foot of the giant tree, whose entire body was covered in emerald green fluorescence, the soil suddenly loosened. Immediately afterwards, a cage made of rattan broke out of the ground. As the wooden cage dispersed, several human figures inside were revealed. It was Yefanyan and others who had gone deep into the beast's nest. Looking at the tragic battle in front of them, artillery fire was raging, corpses were strewn across the fields, and the fire ignited the deep and dark canyon jungle. The few people who had just arrived looked at each other with some panic. "Grandma, you're such a bear, are you starting to fight now?" Yeshinwei cursed loudly and frowned, as if he felt something. Suddenly his eyes changed and he looked at the woman in white who was surrounded by many destruction-level powerhouses not far ahead. Is this the Beast King? If he had followed his past personality, he would have rushed into the battlefield eagerly. But the words he just heard from the Tree King made him increasingly suspicious, and he hesitated to take action. Seeing that the battle situation has become a one-sided massacre, there are more human body parts and mutilated corpses on the ground than jungle beasts. Boom! But at this moment, the clear night sky where the crescent moon could only be seen was suddenly shrouded in dark clouds, and thunder thundered from the sky. The thunder and lightning shining under the clouds flew over the canyon at high speed in the blink of an eye. Accompanied by a loud bang and thunder, a flash of lightning fell from the sky and hit the silver halo above the Beast King's head. The shining silver halo dimmed for a moment, and then shattered like a broken lens. At the same time, the woman in white at the center of the halo groaned, a trace of blood spilled from the corner of her mouth, and her face became paler. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 498. That's. Thunder was rolling in the sky at night, as if something terrifying was brewing. The next second, a beam of solid thunder suddenly shot out from the thunderclouds and landed on the top of the canyon. Wherever the lightning passed, countless ferocious beasts were chopped into pieces by the swift lightning. Even the powerful S-level ferocious beasts were instantly annihilated into ashes. Vaguely, on top of the mountaintop wrapped in lightning, a figure slowly descended onto the battlefield deep in the canyon. A terrifying energy wave spread along with the raging lightning, and everyone held their breath and stared at the direction of the thunder and lightning. As the thunder light dissipated, a humanoid silhouette appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The person who came was actually a boy who looked like a teenager. He had sky-blue broken hair and large broken lines on his young face, but his eyes showed an indifference that was inconsistent with his age. The moment they saw this half-grown boy appear, countless humans on the battlefield below suddenly fell into a boil. It's the God of Thunder, the God of Thunder has arrived. With the God of Thunder taking action, annihilating the Beast King will be a piece of cake. Almost everyone had a look of admiration on their faces, looking at the blue-haired boy falling from the sky with burning eyes. There is no other reason. This young man who walked out of the thunder is recognized as the strongest in the human race. He once fought against a tide of 100,000 corpses with one person and saved the entire base. Thunder God from Genexi base, even he is here. Feeling the majestic energy coming from the front, Yeshinwei's eyes flashed with shock. Facing the young man walking out of the lightning, his expression became particularly solemn. This time, even he couldn't see clearly where the battle was going. The young man known as Thor God stood in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by a group of ferocious mutated beasts, but his eyes were raised to look at the towering beast ahead. In the distance, Lu Jinchang, surrounded by a group of awakened people, came to the boy's side, put on a kind smile and said, "Thunder God came here to help southern Xinjiang, it is really disappointing." Before he finished speaking, he was directly interrupted by the young man, "I'll spare you the polite words." A ferocious look flashed across his eyes, he raised his hand slightly, and endless electric arcs spread around his body. In an instant, the ferocious beasts for several kilometers around fell to the ground under the blazing electric light, and turned into charred corpses in an instant, without even a trace of painful wailing. With just one blow, thousands of ferocious beasts were disinfected. Beast King. He raised his head, his slightly immature voice was extremely clear, and there was electricity in his hand. "Hope you can bring me some fun." He grinned, and an even more majestic electric arc suddenly erupted around him, and his body turned into a beam of lightning and rushed straight towards the woman in white in the distance. During this period, countless ferocious beasts were penetrated and disinfected by it. Even some awakened humans who were fighting mutant monsters were killed by it without explanation. This is a lunatic. The boy known as Thor God showed his domineering and strength to the world when he first appeared on the stage. In just a few breaths, the God of Thunder had arrived in front of the towering tree. A crescent moon appeared vaguely in Su Wen's clear eyes, and she stretched out her jade hand to make a gesture of pulling the bow. The silver light flashed on the fingertips, condensing into silver-white light arrows and shooting out. The human body that was exposed to the backlash from the surroundings and was exposed to silver-white leather once again experienced uncontrollable mutations. But looking at the silver-white pylon in front of him, the God of Thunder, whose body turned into lightning, grinned. His body was stagnant in mid-air, his hands were entangled with thunder and lightning, and he grabbed the silver-white light arrow that was shooting out without hesitation. Incredibly, the terrifying white light that can cause the energy of living things to mutate turned out to be as fragile as a thin slice in the hands of the God of Thunder, and was crushed by his bare hands in the blink of an eye. The next second, the God of Thunder turned into a beam of lightning again and rushed towards Su Wen under the giant tree. A strange color appeared in Su Wen's eyes. At this moment, the giant tree behind her flickered with fluorescent light, and countless thick vine branches broke out of the ground and flew out towards the lightning formed by the God of Thunder. But the thick branches were pierced by lightning in an instant. Thunder rolled in the clouds and mist above our heads. A dazzling thunder and lightning pierced the sky and directly bombarded the towering tree. In an instant, accompanied by a lightning flash like thunder on the ground, a fine crack appeared on the giant tree dozens of meters high, and traces of scorch appeared on the trunk. The destruction-level tree king that had taken root deep in the beast's lair for thousands of years was also severely damaged by Thor's thunder blow. Everyone who saw the scene couldn't help but be shocked. They had only heard about the power of the God of Thunder, but they had never seen the domineering power of the God of Thunder with their own eyes. The power of the God of Thunder is so terrifying. Oh! God of Thunder! On the top of the mountain in the distance, Mu Qiu, who was dressed in black robe, looked up at the thunder clouds covering the sky, with a gleam in his eyes. Another elemental awakener. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the Flame Demon Lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 499. The appearance of Thor instantly turned the tense battle situation around. He alone actually stopped several major destruction-level beings, including the Beast King. Roar. The blue rocks and mammoth beasts that were still slaughtering the human army on the battlefield in the distance roared when they saw this, and they all rushed towards the god of thunder. The huge black shadow crushed down. Compared with the huge body of the mammoth beast, the half-teenager Thor looked like an ant. The mantis blocks the car. However, there was no trace of fear on the god of thunder's face. The strange runes that spread to half of his face flashed with light, and his arms were instantly enveloped in a large amount of lightning. The next second, the god of thunder suddenly swung out his thunder-covered arm, and the strong power of thunder struck the mammoth beast's huge body. In an instant, a violent blue electric current penetrated the giant beast's mountain-like body, and large scorch marks appeared on the solid body. With a loud roar, the body fell towards the cliff behind, causing the rocks behind to collapse rapidly. As the rocks rolled down, a piece of blue flames flew past, unexpectedly hitting the Thor's short body from the side. The deep cold light that seemed to come from the polar regions gathered on the body of the god of thunder, freezing it into an ice sculpture in an instant. Chiang. Accompanied by a cry like an eagle's cry, a huge rock with wings fluttering blue flames appeared above the god of thunder. Penaniao's pupils were sharp, but the next second the ice that froze the god of thunder suddenly made a click sound. Spider-web-like cracks appeared on the ice, followed by ferocious thunder and lightning that instantly broke through the ice and shot out towards the sky. How dare a little beast dare to challenge God? The broken blue hair was blowing in the wind, but the childish face of the god of thunder was filled with a look of madness and evil. I saw him bend his hand into a sword. Thunder and lightning surged above the arm blade, and the dark clouds in the sky also thundered. The god of thunder turned into a burst of lightning and instantly came to the top of the bird hovering in the sky, and slashed down with his arm blade glowing with lightning. In conjunction with the thunderbolt falling from the thunder cloud, a blue thunder suddenly fell and struck the Dapen's back. Chiang. The huge blue rock suddenly hissed in pain, its whole body was wrapped with thunderous light, and the blood in its body seemed to be burning under the lightning strike. The wings burning with blue flames turned into broken wings of ice, shattering inch by inch. Mao Mao. Seeing that her beloved pet beast was injured, Su Wen's face suddenly showed a look of pain. She stretched out her jade hand and shot out a stream of silvery white light arrows in the direction of the god of thunder. Arrows of silver white light are condensed from the essence of moonlight, shooting out like a brilliant rain of light. But the thunder god's speed is faster than the light rain. Fast, too fast. The people below could only see it turn into a beam of lightning, leaving a blue afterimage in the air and disappearing briefly. Without exception, all the arrows of light shooting from the sky were broken by the lightning transformed by the god of thunder, and the latter was now turning into a bunch of meteors and rushing towards Su Wen, who was wearing white clothes below. The thousand-year tree king behind Su Wen pulled out countless thick branches and vines, coiled them layer by layer, and turned into a shield to stand above Su Wen's head. But the layers of shields formed by the thousand-year-old vine branches seemed like paper in front of the electric light. The wooden shield was instantly pierced by the electric light. The connected current passed through the branches and hit the towering tree. The tree instantly became scorched black, and the layer of fluorescence on the surface suddenly dimmed. Oh my God! The fat man and others were still at the foot of the tree king. They felt the power of the thunder and lightning at close range, and their livers and gallbladders were split. At this moment, they saw the lightning swooping down and felt terrified. Without the protection of the tree king, the dazzling electric light soaring into the sky became more and more huge in Su Wen's eyes. The petal-shaped pendant around her neck shimmered with silver light, and a strange petal vaguely appeared. Su Wen slowly closed her eyes, placed the pendant in her palm, and closed her hands. Streams of brilliant silver light were suddenly released around Su Wen, forming a series of silver-white transparent barriers protecting her for several miles. All the awakened persons shrouded by the barrier feel weak in their bodies, the superpowers in their bodies are constantly leaking out, and the changes in their bodies are becoming more intense. Under the lightning, one could see the god of thunder's wild smile, wrapped in destructive thunder and lightning, which instantly struck the light shield above Su Wen's head. There was a strange sound of thunder in mid-air, and everyone in the canyon could only vaguely see a beam of lightning moving continuously on the silver-white barrier. The sky was shrouded in dark clouds, and the lightning caused the rolling thunder to hit the barrier formed by the moonlight. There was just a crisp sound of click, and eggshell-like cracks suddenly appeared on the gorgeous silver light screen. As the lightning flashed, the god of thunder waved his arm wrapped in thunder, and blasted toward the crack in front of him with a grin on his face. In an instant, the moonlight barrier shrouded under the towering trees shattered, and Su Wen, who was in the center, vomited blood and stumbled to the ground. The figure of the god of thunder appeared in mid-air, surrounded by faint lightning. He shook his head and said, "If you fail to cross that step, you will still be an ant after all." After saying this, the arcs of electricity gathered between the slightly immature palms and turned into a bunch of dark blue thunder and lightning javelins. As the god of thunder waved his hand and threw it away, a whoosh sound was heard in mid-air. The lightning spear with terrifying energy shot towards the fallen woman in white. And this time, there was nothing in front of her. With a loud bang, the lightning spear hit the giant tree where the Beast King was. The raging lightning instantly illuminated the horizon, and the violent energy explosion caused smoke and dust to rise. Even the 1,000-year-old tree was blown into a charred hole. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on the towering tree deep in the canyon, with eyes as sharp as torches. The result of this attack will determine whether this war will end. Only the thunder god in the air, when he swung the spear in his hand, suddenly changed his eyes. As time passed, the smoke and dust dissipated after a few breaths, and everyone looked at the center of the smoke in front of them with burning eyes. Is the Beast King dead? Wait, look at that. Everyone present was surprised, looking at the center of the thunder explosion in disbelief. The Beast King in white fell to the ground, his clear eyes were dazed. In front of her, a slender figure in black robe stood up, and a pair of deep blood-red pupils could be seen under the crimson hideous mask. Chiu Mu. Below, Yefanyan's pupils shrank slightly, looking at the figure in front of her, and her dry lips subconsciously murmured. Sign in at the end of the world, start by devouring the flame demon lord. Author, MOCNU. Chapter 500. Teacher. Su Wen, who was rescued by Mu Qiu, opened her mouth slightly, and her clear eyes were also filled with surprise. In her impression, Mu Qiu still had the status of Shure who subverted Yuhei, which was one of the reasons why she had never thought of asking Yuhei for help. Destruction-level combat power could no longer turn the tide of the battle on a battlefield of this level. Instead, it would put her teacher in danger, so she chose to take the responsibility herself. But the current situation is obviously beyond Su Wen's expectations. You little guys are really more troublesome than the others. A magnetic voice came from under the mask, with the same indifference in his tone. Suddenly, Su Wen seemed to have transformed back into the girl with a ponytail in a floral skirt. The figure in front of her had not changed for many years. Teacher. Tears fell from the corners of Su Wen's eyes, but a smile appeared on her cherry-like mouth. Mu Qiu raised her head and looked at the figure wrapped in thunder and lightning in mid-air. When their eyes met, Thor seemed to notice something, and his eyes changed slightly. You. At this moment, a shout suddenly sounded from the battlefield below. Overlord Guy, he is Overlord Guy who killed countless fellow human beings in the Divine Continent. Everyone followed the sound and saw a handsome man covered in blood on the battlefield, pointing at the black-robed figure and shouting, with a look of resentment in his eyes. It is Xiao Yunyi from Yongxiao City. Hearing Xiao Yunyi's name, everyone recalled the legend about the black-robed masked man. The Overlord Guye who slaughtered the geniuses of all major bases in the world of gods. He actually appears here. Everyone looked at the black-robed figure in the distance with shock in their eyes. That Guya actually has something to do with the Beast King. Could it be that the incident in God's domain was also driven by the Beast King behind his back? It turns out that the Beast King had already planned to eradicate the genius of my human race. In an instant, everyone's suspicions were cast on the Beast King and the black-robed figure. Countless eyes looked at the black figure standing under the giant tree with fear or hatred. This Guya and the Beast King are in the same group, kill them both. Yes, Overlord Guy and the beasts brutally harmed my fellow human beings, which is really a shame for mankind. As the sounds of shouting and cursing came from the crowd, more and more humans began to respond, as if they regarded Mewtwo as a human spy, and their expressions were fierce and their hearts were filled with anger. Kill the Beast King and Judge Guyet. Kill the Beast King and Judge Guyet. For a time, countless people raised their arms and shouted, the crowd was excited and their morale was boosted. Mewtwo. Under the giant tree, standing not far from Mewtwo, Yefanyan and others looked at the many human beings below who were full of hatred, with complicated expressions. Yefanyan looked around, her brows furrowed. She hurriedly stepped forward to explain, but was stopped by Yeshinwei on the side. The latter shrugged and glanced at the black figure in front of him. His usually arrogant face became a little more solemn. Wait a minute, this person's ability may be much greater than you think. After experiencing so many things, he had vaguely guessed Mewtwo's identity. Standing in front of the cliff surrounded by giant trees with branches and vines, Mewtwo saw the reactions of the people below, and the eyes under the mask were profound. He suddenly looked back at Yefanyan's face and chuckled. Don't be nervous, Miss Sword Girl. Because this is human nature, not to mention. The calm tone as always was a bit more domineering. Looking at the tragic battlefield below, he laughed and said, why do I need to explain to others what I do all my life? An unspeakable aura of terror brewed in the surrounding space. At this moment, a powerful wave of destruction suddenly erupted in front of Mewtwo, and a huge black shadow soared from the horizon. Lonely night. I saw Taoist Master Lucien charging towards Mewtwo with an irresistible momentum with a huge horn on his head. His son Zhang Duquan was killed by Overlord Guy in the Divine World. This attack by Taoist Master Lucien has the potential to kill, and he is bound to kill the black-robed figure in front of him to avenge his son's murder. The destructive level fluctuations hit him, and cracks appeared in the surrounding space under the blow, which showed that the Taoist Master Luxian was furious. Everyone could only see a huge beam of fierce light rushing past. But the next second, the man in black robes in front of the giant tree suddenly raised his hand, and the giant deer transformed by Taoist Deer Immortal was instantly whipped away by him. The huge figure was directly embedded in the cliff beside it, and there was no sound anymore. This single blow actually broke the full blow of the destructive level powerhouse. Everyone was dumbfounded after seeing this scene. The figure in front suddenly looked up at the sky, and a low murmur came from under the mask. If the law of heaven attacks me, I will swallow up the heaven. If all spirits do not accept me, I will. The black-robed figure raised his hand and slowly took off the crimson mask. Revealing a handsome man's face, he suddenly flipped the mask upside down in the air, and a wild voice resounded through the sky. Suppress all races. The next moment, majestic power soared into the sky, and a beam of blood-red light rose into the sky, making all living beings present tremble. Then, a large area of dark shadows suddenly emerged from the ground of the canyon, and quickly moved between the mountains like a wave, covering the sky and the earth, until it swept across the entire valley. Countless black figures emerged from the black wave, their blood-red eyes were full of evil desire for killing, and their purple skin showed how supreme they were. Looking around, the entire mountain range has gathered dense black figures. At the same time, several terrifying figures slowly emerged in the void around the black-robed man. A woman's laughter was heard among the flying butterflies, and a girl in a red dress gathered in the midst of butterflies. The space on the side was shattered, and a man in a white suit with an expression as cold as ice stepped through the space and stood in the air. The diffused yellow sand gathered, and a bronze man in red armor stepped into the air from the wild sand. Amid the roar of artillery fire, a tall white mecha flew into the air. The holy light shone, and a phantom of a holy angel emerged in the air. These figures gathered around the black-robed man, and each of them exuded an extremely terrifying destructive aura. And the next scene made the tens of millions of human troops present stunned their eyes. The black figures that suddenly appeared all knelt on the ground, and their red eyes were full of admiration and respect. Even the several destruction-level masters knelt on one knee at this moment, and the sound shook the earth. "Welcome, my lord." The black-robed man who was bowed to by countless figures suddenly burned with red flames, and a long red dragon rushed into the sky along the blood light. The blood light rising from the top of his head instantly covered the originally clear sky, turning it into a dark night. The rolling red flames gradually dissipated along the blood light, and a domineering figure wearing crimson armor descended on this world. A dark red long hair fluttered, and a handsome and evil man stepped out of the flames and stood in the air under the witness of hundreds of thousands of lives. WWW. A long fiery red dragon circled around him, and his weird face showed a domineering meaning, as if he was an unparalleled monarch who came to the world. In the distance, Lu Jinchang, the commander of the battlefield, looked at the evil man in the air, and his arm holding the scepter trembled. His eyeballs trembled, and his old face instantly became extremely solemn, and he murmured, "Lord of the Eternal Night."